Gregg Popovich being replaced as Team USA men's basketball head coach. Mikal Bridges, some interesting comments on his potential extension, and we're only a week away somehow from Suns training camp. We'll look at the roster, see who might get an invite over to Suns camp and fill out that second two-way spot. All of that coming up right away on Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, we are back. This is Locked On Suns, 8 days from Suns training camp. We'll be going 3 days a week here, but next week we're back to the grind every single day for you. I am Brendon Kleen, the host of this show. Follow our show at Locked On PHX Suns. Follow me at Brendon Kleen 14 on Twitter. And of course, it is a Monday, so Brandon is here. You can follow him at @ZonaHoops_. We're recording this on a Saturday. We're not used to doing that, but I'll ask you the same thing I usually do. How's your weekend been so far, man?
Pretty good so far. I'd like to think it's just getting started too. So but it's good to be back, and it's crazy how fast this offseason's flown by. Like I just tweeted earlier, like 16 days away from their first preseason game. So I don't know if I'm ready for this, but should be pretty fun.
I miss the NBA. This was the first week I feel like where I really was starting to like Zach Lowe started doing his podcast more frequently again. I'm like seeing some writing about the like preview stuff. I'm like, okay, we're getting close, and I'm starting to get kind of interested. The Aaron Gordon extension got my like wheels turning a little bit. I'm like, all right, okay, the NBA is coming back, but schedule wise, I don't know if I'm ready for that part. It's a grind.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think just with all the moving parts going on right now, and just like how there's still some like unsettled rosters and like the possible Ben Simmons trade and all that kind of stuff going on behind the scenes, I feel like something's going to happen soon, and then it'll be like, oh damn, like the season's actually about to get started. Like this is getting real. So I'm sure we'll have a couple more of those moments. But yeah, it's been a little bit too quiet until that Gordon signing.
That's true. Yeah, I will say it's going to be nice this time, because a lot of the discussion around now last season was, why are they starting so early? COVID is going to be such a problem. Who's even going to be active every night? And we at least seem to be in a place where that's not so much the conversation. We can kind of just be like, where's Ben Simmons going, and geek out about that stuff. So that should be good. We'll do a little bit of that in the end of the show here again as we get closer to camp. Who might be on the invite list? What type of player could we see get that second two-way contract next to Chandler Hutchison? We still don't know what that last roster spot will look like. It sounds like the Thad Young machinations are going to continue to grind until we get to opening night. I don't really have anything new there, so we won't touch on that too much, but we will some of these young guys who might have a shot. But let's start with Monty Williams, Brandon, because it came out over the weekend or last week where basically Pop was I want to say one and done, I guess, technically he did that FIFA tournament in 2019 and this one Olympics, and now he is going to leave. There's always been rumors he'll leave the Spurs sometime soon as well. So Team USA needs a new head coach. Grant Hill, if for those who may have missed that, he is now the chairman of Team USA. So replacing Jerry Colangelo in that spot, and Grant Hill will be the guy tasked. And it sounds like, Brandon, he wants somebody who has NBA head coaching experience, as well as, I think he said actually an active NBA head coach, as well as time spent with Team USA. So that inevitably narrows the list pretty considerably. And then if you look to even more recent, because a lot of guys went and did stuff with Team USA, years ago and don't have recent experience, it's really Steve Kerr, Nate McMillan, and Monty Williams. And we could have a Suns head coach be the head coach of Team USA. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think it'd be awesome. I think there's a lot of connections that Monty has. Obviously, Colangelo's not making that decision anymore, but I'm sure he's still helping Grant Hill with that transition process, and he has a great relationship with Jerry. So I think obviously being an assistant for 5+ years for Team USA, and like he's 26-0 as an assistant coach for Team USA. So just throwing that out there. He has a relationship with Popovich. Obviously, he was an assistant for Coach K on their staff too. So I think there's a lot of connections there, and he's already worked with like more than half the players just over the course of his time as an assistant and in the league. So I think it would be a seamless transition, something that is an easy sell as far as like likable guy, great coach. The players are going to respect him, and just someone you want to go play for overseas. So I think I would love to see it. I think if Monty wants it, I think he has as good a chance as anyone. Steve Kerr has battled some health issues. He's getting a little bit up there, and like he might just be too tired to go through that grind. And someone like Monty that's served his time, like I could definitely see him enjoying a process like that. But yeah, I think it's a no-brainer if they want a coach that can kind of check all those boxes of former player, has experience, likable, all that stuff. So I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the point you made about wanting, not Monty wanting it, but the players wanting it is, I think, going to continue to be a big deal. It's been a part of the conversation about Team USA from the FIBA tournament to this past Olympics. I know there were COVID considerations, but like, I don't know even if if it was a normal Olympics, I think we still would have seen a lot of guys just say no. We've seen that for years. So the fact that Monty not only, like you said, has like he's coached Kevin Durant, he's coached Chris Paul. I guess Chris is probably done, but Devin Booker, he's coached Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and I guess those guys are not going to be on Team USA either. But he has had these relationships with so many stars, has cultivated good relationships with those stars. Anthony Davis, of course, another one. And the fact that we've seen the culture that he built in Phoenix be such a part of why guys want to come play here, I think that has to play a role when you're talking about Grant Hill picking a coach. And I think the youth part is a big reason why, but I don't necessarily know that Steve Kerr isn't that. But look, to me, like if Kevin Durant wants to go in 2024 and have one last shot, the idea that Steve Kerr is going to be the guy to bring him there seems a little bit awkward to me at the very least. Like, KD, for all intents and purposes right now, is the figurehead of USA basketball, right? He just was the clear leader to get them to that gold. No doubt about it, who was the best player and the leader of that group. I think that's going to be the case for the next FIBA tournament and the next Olympics if he wants to be there. And so Monty knows him. Monty is going to be much more of a guy to get him to come there than I think Steve Kerr would be. And then the other thing with Nate McMillan, and it's not to say like Monty is only like the top consideration because of what the other guys aren't. I mean, we all know Monty has plenty of qualities that make him very qualified in and of himself. But with Nate, the reason I wouldn't think it would make a ton of sense is Grant Hill is the part owner of the Hawks. So that's already been out there, like when this stuff's getting written up and tweeted about and whatever, that hiring the guy that your team that you own just made head coach permanently and everything else is just, I don't think it's like disqualifying, but it could be a little bit awkward, especially if Grant Hill just wants to like put a statement, I'm making my imprint on Team USA basketball. Hiring the guy who is already the head coach of the team you kind of help run is a little awkward. So I lean with Monty, and I also think the good thing about Monty, just to close my thought, is he can be the coach for 2-3 Olympics if he really wanted to be. We don't see guys stay for that long all the time. It's been a revolving door, but that's because Coach K and Pop were old. If you get a younger coach in there who's qualified, you could have him be there for a really long time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's a good point about Durant. Monty obviously was an assistant with him in OKC and also coaching on Team USA. So they have a really great relationship. So I think if the players have any say, I think Monty's going to be their clear pick just based off the competition. So yeah, I think honestly, and I don't know how that factors into recruiting for free agency and stuff like that, but it can't hurt. We don't really have like a track record because Coach K, obviously, he's not an NBA coach, so you can't really factor that in. And Popovich had such a short stint.
But we saw it the other direction in Boston this year with Udoka being the clear choice for Tatum and Brown over there because they knew him from Team USA. That's the other direction, but those relationships matter. That's one-on-one stuff that you definitely don't just get wandering around NBA facilities and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, and Monty is such a great guy that I think the Suns' culture has already shifted to the point where free agents down the road are going to consider them just based off of like what they have built. And then if you factor in the relationships and reputation around the league, it's only going to get better if he's the head coach there. So I think it'd be great not only for Monty but for the Suns, and potentially lead to some stuff down the road. But yeah, there's no way to guarantee that or anything, obviously based off of track record. But I do think it'd be a step in the right direction for sure.
I think that they should want to hire somebody a little bit younger. I mean, obviously anybody will be younger than Popovich, so that part is. But you're right. Like Kerr is a guy who you could probably see doing one Olympics. Is he really going to be coaching the 2028 Olympic team? No. So, I think in that capacity, and McMillan is older than Monty also. I will just point out these are not the only three candidates. I think guys like Tom Thibodeau have been around Team USA. I think there's a couple others, but further in the past, Doc Rivers did it in like the early 2000s. There just aren't a lot of people because we've seen some of the college ranks, like Jay Wright has been around Team USA a lot, but he's, doesn't seem to be in the running because Grant Hill said he wants it to be an active NBA head coach for obvious reasons. So yeah. I just think Monty seems to, all roads sort of lead to him. And I don't think the Jerry Colangelo connection hurts by any means, like you pointed out there, Brandon. So we'll have to continue to monitor it. I think it will come soon. I just think you want that position to be filled, and you want somebody to just sort of be able to lay the foundation of what their program is going to look like over there. And, all the smaller tournaments all throughout, those all matter, and those all, can be feeders for what Team USA, the Olympic and FIBA teams end up looking like every couple of years. So we'll see what happens. Let's go to Mikal Bridges, because Zach Harper went on the Sun Solar Panel with Dave King over at Bright Side of the Sun and reignited the conversation in the Suns fan base about the Mikal Bridges extension. We've all been focused on DeAndre Ayton, but let's talk a little bit about Bridges and what his deal could look like, what he might be holding out for, and all of that. First, though, quick word from SweatBlock, the little secret to confidence that you can wear in your back pocket to get rid of unwanted sweat and odor. You just wipe it. It's not even a typical deodorant. It is a wipe. It's like a wet nap. They've sent me the pack. You just tear it open. They even say wipe it before bed the night before, and they say it lasts up to 7 days per use. I'm not going to lie. I've used it, but I was too nervous to look. We live in the Valley. It's too hot. I did it like 2 days later, but it lasted that long, and I didn't notice a thing. So again, you wear what you want, you go where you want, you do what you want, and you just don't have to worry. That is the most important thing. This stuff has been tested by firefighters in the heat of action, been tested by me in the heat of the Arizona sun, and it is a bestseller on Amazon for the past 10 years. So once again, that little secret to confidence right in your back pocket to get rid of that unwanted sweat and odor. If you deal with this, if anyone you know deals with this, and if you live here, I don't even have to ask. I know that you do. You have to check out SweatBlock. So get it today for 20% off at sweatblock.com with the promo code LOCKEDON, or at Amazon and CVS. Today's show also brought to you by DirecTV Stream. Does this sound familiar? You've got a device that lets you catch the game live, another one that lets you stream your favorite shows. You got sports highlights going on your phone, and then your best friend's neighbor's login just for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream. It brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. No more juggling remotes, and no need to buy another device ever again. The best part is that there is no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. Learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required, and content varies by package. All right, real quick here, Brandon. So basically the gist of what Zach said, writer at The Athletic, does SiriusXM radio. He's at Talk Hoops. He has been gotten the ire of Suns fans for years from the Looter and the Riot. Yes. Best known for his greatest hits on Twitter, the Looter and the Riot. But I just want to hear what you think, because he basically said if he's Mikal, while normally we wouldn't think of Mikal as a max player, that there is at least enough of a case for Mikal being a max player that he would try to hold out for that max, or as close to it as he could get if he was Mikal and Mikal's agent. Do you think that's reasonable?
I don't think it is based off of what he did this season, but I do think it makes sense if he's betting on himself. And this next season, he thinks he can make that leap to where, he shows that he has a little bit more in his bag offensively, and he continues to get better. And if he holds out, then, in the open market, just seeing what he can get. And I think it could go both ways though. He's right, because if he doesn't take any dramatic leaps offensively or show that at least more flashes on a consistent basis, then all of a sudden you're looking at someone that I think might lose some money in a sense. So I think Mikal too wants to be here. Like, he's made that pretty clear. So I don't see him playing that role, but obviously he has to do what's best for himself and his agent as well. So I could see it going both ways. Like right now with these 2 extensions with him and DA, I think there's probably a lot of like fine print talk being like, whether it's incentives or player options, stuff like that, they're probably working on. So to me, I think these deals are probably locked in place. It's just a matter of figuring out those small details and getting it done, making it official. They could be waiting on something, a trade, cough, that they're not involved in, just to be clear, but just, the Thad Young thing. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of moving parts in it, but overall, if Mikal wants to hold out, it's a risk on his part, but it's something that could pay off or bite him in the ass. So I think it goes both ways.
Yeah, all great points. I think you're right that it's the point that I've been making, right? It's like we don't always see there's this middle time is not very common to see the rookie extensions happen. They happen right when free agency hits, or they happen when training camp comes. It's rare that you see like late August, early September, anything really. We've seen like Robert Williams, Marcus Smart, Aaron Gordon, but we don't really see news. Nope. Like literally these people leave town. It's like, it might sound ridiculous, but like people just aren't around to do it. We know Mikal's in the Valley right now. He was at the ASU game. I think he stays here most of the time because his trainer lives here, and, family is pretty quick to get here too. But I think the player option on the Aaron Gordon deal surprised me. So to your point with the fine print, that stuff is important. It ends up playing a way bigger role than we like to think. We all just want to talk about the years and the number and whatever. But you said something interesting, that you feel like it's pretty much locked in, that you think it's going to happen, and you don't think either one of these guys is going to get to restricted free agency.
I think it's possible. Maybe if there's like right now they're playing chicken and just kind of waiting. And I could see one of those situations where there's either an agreed upon date where they're going to announce both extensions together, or they're going to do them separately on different days and give them kind of their own day to like shine, but if they both want to test restricted free agency, then that's obviously something that I think Jones either has a plan like in his back pocket where he's like, okay, we're going to do this and you guys are going to get this, or maybe they're just negotiations are going wrong. Like there's no way to know for sure, but I do think both of them want to be here. I think they're both going to get paid. It's just a matter of figuring out those like small details in the contracts. And I've seen some Suns fans say they don't want incentives in their contracts, which I'm on the opposite end. I think, especially for Ayton, like if you can add some incentives based like details in his contract for, winning awards or like a certain amount of like
rebounding.
Rebounding.
It's to like 12.5 rebounds or something. Just make him hold a carrot in front of him.
And for Mikal as well, maybe some offensive stuff, like just throw in like these incentives to kind of keep them motivated because they're still young. You don't want the ego to get in the way. I think they're both great dudes and that won't be an issue. But I think for any first contract, you always want to add, especially for like a young, like star type player, you should add those incentives early on just to kind of keep them hungry and, grinding for that second contract.
I go back and forth with Mikal because you said something at the beginning that like he's a great dude. You can tell he's committed here. I think that's always been the case, but I think that there is a tendency sometimes, like just as fans, as people who care about sports, and I think Kawhi Leonard reminded us of this to the greatest extent a few years back when it was like, well, there's no possible way that Kawhi Leonard is not going to stay with the Spurs. He's a, class act. He's a quiet dude, whatever. Now all of a sudden he's like, one of the most covered like divas, so to speak, in the NBA, right? He wants to live in San Diego. He wants to practice when he wants to practice. And I don't even think there's anything wrong with that, but it just changed how we saw him. And I think it should change how we see players, because I don't think Mikal, like, I definitely don't see him like sitting out training camp or making a big deal, because he is just a low-key dude, but he's also worth what he's worth. And we keep seeing these contracts over and over and over that show us the value of wings, the value of glue guys, the value of 3-and-D players, of defense overall, etc. So I kind of feel like the Mikal contract will be more player friendly, more friendly to him than we're expecting. And I think the Ayton contract will be less friendly to him than we're expecting, whether it's incentives or it is a legitimately below max contract. That's kind of been where I'm at for a little while. And the only thing I think is up in the air that I don't have a good gauge for is, and I don't think we've talked about this, if either they don't come to an extension with these guys or the extension is maybe not what they wanted. Are you worried about like the atmosphere, vibe, culture being affected? Because it's very easy the past 2 seasons to have a great culture when your best players are maxed out and your young players don't have to worry about money. But we're now getting to that point in the process where it's like they're coming off of a loss and guys want what they want now. So I'm not trying to say that I'm worried about it, but I'm wondering if you are.
Not at all. Just because of both of those dudes are like so unselfish and they're not worried about, getting their own or anything like that. So obviously they want to get paid. That's a different story. But on the court, I think both those guys are like ultimate team players. And they're guys that are, obviously still very young and have a long ways to go before they get to that point to where maybe they could be starting to say, like, I need the ball more, stuff like that. But I think at this stage of their careers, I don't see any issues like growing like that. That's usually something that could come over time, like later on in their careers, once they're kind of not like sick of each other, but they're at the point where they're comfortable with each other. Like we've seen that with the 7-second or less Suns teams with how Marion kind of took that back seat and there was some envy there. Like he didn't feel like he got enough love and stuff like that, even though leading up to that, their relationships were all great. So there's definitely stuff like that down the road that could happen. And maybe Cam Johnson is that guy who kind of feels like underappreciated or something. But for now, like I'd say the next 2-3 years, that's not something I'm like the least bit concerned about. But, as like if all these guys hit and they just keep getting better and better, there's going to come a point where, you only have so many mouths to feed.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. I'm not too worried about it either. If it was different players, if it was a different team, if we had heard anything in the past or anything this summer while these negotiations were happening that would lead us to feel that way, I might be more willing to buy into it. But right now, it's all happened behind the scenes. We haven't heard, leaking of the Suns are lowballing DeAndre Ayton leaked from his agent to Mark Stein or whoever. That hasn't happened. So I don't think there's any reason to worry yet about that. Come tip off of opening night. Let's pivot. I asked you to do some homework, Brandon, on guys that might be able to come in here in training camp and compete. I have a couple ideas on my own, and we'll get to all of that in a second. First, though, a quick word from Sleeper. In 2018, the fantasy sports experts at Sleeper realized fantasy basketball was broken. Games were being won and lost based on whose players had more scheduled games that week. It made no sense and required very little strategy. So in 2020, Sleeper released a brand new way of playing fantasy basketball. It's called Game Pick, and it's only available on Sleeper. In Game Pick, owners pick a single game per week for each starter to count toward their team's total score, which ensures an even number of games played between all opponents. The days of losing because your opponent's players had more scheduled games is over. The days of mindless daily busy work just to make sure you got guys in your lineup is over as well. And Game Pick is the reason. You pick one game per week for each player based on their matchups, home versus away, opponent's defensive ranking, pace of play, all that stuff. You add it up to a strategy that is more strategic, and less busy work, less mindlessness, less checking in at work or while you're watching your kid's baseball game, whatever it might be. You just set it. Don't worry about it. Do all the work at one time and you're good. Sleeper cracked the code fantasy basketball. If you love playing fantasy football, if you prefer building out a weekly strategy, you're going to love Game Picks. It's really more like that football type of setup. Just once per week, let it go, see what happens. So download the Sleeper app, start a league with your friends today, and you will not be disappointed. Again, that is the Sleeper app. That is the Game Picks League, and have fun. All right. Today's show also brought to you by Theragun. Don't let the stress of daily life weigh on your body, whether you're an elite athlete or someone just like me trying to get through the day tension. Free Theragun can help. I've been sitting in an office chair for the first time in my life, like all day, every day. And yes, it does indeed suck. Theragun is a godsend. It doesn't just feel good. It goes to the source of the pain by releasing tension using the signature Theragun percussive therapy, which goes 60% deeper than vibration alone. So whether you want to treat your muscle tension from workouts, an injury, or just the stresses of everyday life, there's no substitute for the Theragun Gen 4. The OLED screen and design make you feel like you're holding something from the future. Just go to their site and check it out. And the Theragun app learns from your behaviors and suggests guided, personalized routines. Try Theragun for 30 days, starting at only $199. Go to therabody.com/lockedon right now to try it out and get your Gen 4 Theragun today. That's therabody.com/lockedon, therabody.com/lockedon. Okay, Brandon, as I said, I gave you some homework on short notice, and you were able to whip up some names. It seems like my initial thought here is the Suns. One thing that does happen in August and September is these random guys sign random deals that we don't think about, and the Suns haven't done that except for Chandler Hutchison. So who is left? Who could we reasonably expect to maybe come into camp and be a diamond in the rough?
So apologies for the background noise we got here going, but yeah, I did some
homework. We have a guest on the pod.
It.
It's no problem.
Yeah, I did some homework on it, and essentially at this point, looking at the rosters from top to bottom, there's 11 teams with 20 plus players on their roster heading into training camp. The Suns have 15. So I think right now they're just kind of going to be sitting back and waiting for some of those, players to get cut. I looked at 10 different players and that were on my target list. 9 of them had signed. Nate Darling is one name that popped up that seemed like it could be a James Jones guy, just 6'6", like really good shooter. Was on a two-way with the Hornets last year. Didn't work out, and now he's the only one on that list that didn't sign recently. Marcus Zagorowski is another name that Brooklyn might they haven't signed him to a two-way yet. They're gonna have to decide between him and another big. I'm blanking on the name, but there's a chance he could be a free agent. And then Isaiah Hartenstein just signed with the Clippers. He got an invite to their camp, but if he doesn't make the roster, he's actually eligible for a two-way slot. So he would be fitting that Chandler Hutchison mold where it's like he's older, he has some experience, and he barely is eligible for it. So he could be a ready backup big that can come in and carve out a few minutes here and there. So the names have really tried up overall, and just looking at the rosters, the Suns by far have the least amount of players heading into camp. Most teams are like in that 18 to 21 range. So sitting at 15, it's like I think right now they're just going to sit back and wait for someone they like to get cut.
Let me ask you this: did Kyle Alexander do enough that you would want him to come to camp, or you probably don't sign anybody to that two-way slot right away? There's no rush, no reason to do that, especially with the limited people who are available at this point in time. But would you bring him in and just continue to watch his development, see what he becomes?
You mean Tyshawn Alexander, according to the broadcast?
Yeah, well, we heard like 6 different names for every single summer Sun. So, yeah, whatever you call him, that guy.
Yeah, I think he was like somewhat of a surprise. He was impressive. If they want to invite him to camp just as like a nod of respect, that'd be cool. I want to give him a two-way, but I think if he earns it in camp and really turns heads there, then maybe that's something they can consider. But I think right now, just looking at how many teams have 20 plus roster spots, like there's going to be at least 4 or 5 pretty high quality names that are going to fall through the cracks, and they should try to scoop them up before they go overseas or do something else. So I'm sure they're looking out for that, but it's probably not like a huge priority for them. I think they're more focused probably on getting that young deal done or something else like for that last roster spot. So the two ways probably not high, but
let's jump over to that because that was my next question. I think part of what we could see there, especially because we know the Suns have this open roster spot, the Spurs and the Grizzlies are 2 teams that a lot of people have been just mentioning in these types of conversations, because it's not only that they have a lot of players, the Spurs have 18, I think the Grizzlies have 20, but they have a lot of NBA talent. Like, they don't have these throwaway names. Both of these teams have a lot of players, so a lot of good players. So the Spurs, if you were to target like one player on the Spurs who you might get in addition to Thad Young, if this deal were to come to fruition, because again, Flex from Jersey continue to report it. We've also seen Jake Fisher and others beating the drum on this, and I don't think it's died down at all. I think we could just see it happen during training camp. Who would you be targeting from San Antonio's roster if they could get a 2-for-1, 2-for-2, 3-for-2 type of package?
So Derek White would have been awesome before they got Shamit. That doesn't really make a lot of sense though.
And he's expensive.
Yeah,
he's gotten paid already.
The contracts would have to match. So looking at the rest of their roster, like Joe Wieskamp is pretty interesting. He's a rookie, someone that I think Jones would have loved.
Trey Jones.
Trey Jones is another guy too. Yeah, but I mean they have so many guards too, so I think you could see them trying to unload one. But then you look back at the Suns guard depth, and it's like, they probably have to cut someone. So it's kind of I don't see any like clear cut like perfect fits that make a ton of sense. But if it's ends up being a 2-for-2, I think I'd be a little bit surprised. I think they kind of want to do a 2-for-1 and then maybe fill in those last spots with like one of their guys.
Yeah, I was trying to look as you were talking, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. Al-Farouq Aminu, I don't really buy the physical like ability to stay healthy, but if you were to have a 15th man as good as Al-Farouq Aminu, I think you'd feel pretty good about that. But he's making $10 million. So you stack that with Thad Young. The Suns just don't really have obvious matching salaries for that. Even if it was Saric and Jalen Smith, I still don't think you're getting there. So the Spurs, we'll have to see. I agree. I think that they have that weird structure where guys are either expensive or very, very, very cheap. They don't really have a lot of those middle salaries or throwaway salaries that could be fit. So let's go to Memphis because they're the other one. I think that they have, maybe outside of Yves Pons, who is from Tennessee as well, and he's a rookie, I believe. So he might be the obvious one. But other than him, like 19, 20 NBA caliber players who could reasonably make a roster. So is anyone on their roster who could potentially be cut? Because they have Jarrett Culver now, they have Carson Edwards now, they have Daniel Oturu, who was with the Clippers. Is there anyone here?
Please.
Well, Killian Tilly
would be. I don't think he's going to get cut, but I mean, he would be.
I think he's on a two-way for them, right?
Yeah, I think so. But if they want to open up a spot, because they're carrying so many young guys that, if Yves Pons really impresses them in training camp, and I think that Sam Merrill's another name they have too. So they have so many young guys that if they need to clear out some space, they're definitely on the top of the list of the teams I would look at. Tilly, though, would be like a perfect big for like what they like to do. I can't see them letting him go though, because they're like the ultimate. Their front office is like the ultimate draft Twitter like team, like real life team. So it's really funny to look at how they draft at the back end and like in undrafted free agency, and picking up Culver and Clark is just really funny to me. But yeah, I think they're definitely a team that can make a lot of sense for the Suns, just finding someone in the cracks. And there's a few other teams, like Brooklyn has like 20, I think. So I don't know, just looking for those diamonds in the roughs just to fill out that last spot. Should be pretty easy, but it's going to be a really quick process because those agents, it's the second they get cut, they're already talking to, or probably before. They get cut. Yeah, they're already looking at, teams in Europe and just trying to get them the best deal possible. So it has to make sense for both sides. And that's kind of the tough part this time of year. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, like, we're talking about the two-way, we're talking about training camp invites, but the deal loosely that's been talked about for Thaddeus Young, if that does happen, it's going to be Saric and Smith and maybe a second-round pick or something like that. That would create an extra roster spot. And I think that's part of why the deal is really good, and I'm sure that's part of why San Antonio is trying to hold out for more, is you're clearing that Saric roster spot to actually be able to add a player. Whereas right now it's a dead roster spot, and we don't know if he's going to be out for long enough to actually get that disabled player exception. So it's really just like this empty spot. If they can clear that, then they're also going to have another slot for a player. So they would have the 14th and 15th spots open, and the two-way deal, and all these training camp spaces. So I don't think that they're done by any means. I think that we'll see a lot of these deals happen. We'll just have to it's like you're talking about that order of operations of, how quickly into camp does this player get cut, and do they already have something lined up? Would they rather get playing time overseas or make money here? And it's almost boring, but not boring. At least to me, it's not boring. Because if we're going to get mad about the two-way thing with Tyshawn Alexander and everything else, then these opportunities are places where you can find players who maybe sneak into the back end of your rotation one day. So I think it does matter. It's not the biggest deal. It might be a 5% chance, but it is important, and it's going to be who we watch in preseason. So if there's nothing else, it's let's get some entertainment factor in there. Let's get some players we recognize and who might be some fun. But that'll wrap us up. Anything we should be on the lookout for from you, Brandon, at Brightside, at Zona Hoops, coming in the next few weeks? Or I guess 1 week, since we'll talk to you again soon.
Circle October 5th on your guys' calendars. Can't give away too much, but some fun things coming up. Other than that, just stay locked in, subscribe to Locked On Suns and Zona Hoops as well. So
cool. All right, we will have more on that. A little sneak preview potentially of Brandon's hint there, but until Wednesday, one last week of 3 shows. I'm lining up hopefully some guests for the rest of this week. We'll have any news that comes down and keep it right here. But until then, enjoy your week.